Hello and welcome back to the fourth stage of the World Championship. The second game has finished now. You might remember that I won my first game against Isaiah. And this game actually is not the second game of the first batch, but already the first game of the second batch, because the game against Silent X111 from the first batch is still going on. Yeah. And Xxyu has before the second batch started, already his two games finished, and he won against TDXY and lost against Silent X111, so everything is still possible for him. And I at the moment have one game finished, and I was able to win this one game. And yeah, I didn't play against Xxyu yet, he's a Chinese player, and yeah, let's take a look at the game. And we can see that there is the Red Cross, there's Hollywood together with Marlene Dietrich, Fleming and Chaplin. Also there's Shakespeare, Darwin and Gaudi in H2, so printing presses are really strong in this game. But we also have Bill Gates and Sid Meier, so labs also can work. Then we have the Railroad, we have Eiffel Tower Louvre, so some culture wonders. And yeah, we have Nobel, Napoleon maybe as a counter to those culture leaders, and Maria Theresa. Then we have St. Peter's Basilica, who can work very nicely with going for some cultural leaders in the Hollywood at the end. We have the Himeji Castle, Machu Picchu, Silk Road. We have Columbus, but there's no Suez Canal, no Cook in the game. Then we have Leonardo, who also works nicely with printing presses. We have not a lot of strength leaders, only Barbarossa basically. I mean, Saladin can give some strength, and Nostradamus maybe, yeah. Yeah, and then Xxyu is in the first position, and he just picks the library, which gives me Clio and Rome Roads, which is of course quite strong. So maybe you could think about taking Clio so that I can't get a leader and a wonder. On the other hand, then I could maybe take Rome Roads and Ridgeland, and Boudica would still be available for me at the turn after that. So I would still get a very nice start. And I think library is maybe better than Rome Roads in two-player games. And maybe Xxyu prefers the library, and if I get Clio Rome Roads, he gets Boudica at the next turn, or Alex, so he also has a nice start. We both have a nice start. But if he takes Clio, he could either get library or pyramids, and that could maybe also be an idea. And then I can take the Rome Roads and Cleopatra. I think that's a very nice start. And why I think that Cleopatra, together with Rome Roads, also together with the library, is one of the best starts that you can get, we can see at my next turn. Xxyu goes for Boudica, elects her, builds a mine, increases population, wants to have Boudica instead of Alex. Yeah, and I think with those leaders, only Saladin and Nostradamus work without a nice setup, so Boudica might be better. And in this turn I can go for Cleopatra, build 2 stages of the Rome Roads and increase my population. The nice thing, and why I think Cleopatra with Rome Roads or with Library, or maybe also with Stonehenge, is one of the best starts you can get, is that normally if you, only when you get both of them at the first pick, because normally if you get a wonder and a leader at the first pick, you can elect your leader, build a mining grease pop, and then you have one civil action that you mostly only can spend with taking a yellow card, which is not ideal. But if you get Rome Roads and Clio at the first pick, you can use all your 4 civil actions without having to take yellow card. I can finish the Rome Roads very early. I delay my mine, but I get a production from the Rome Roads, and then I can build a mine later on. Now, one thing I didn't like here is that the printing press is on the card row, and Boudica is one of the printing press on turn 3 enabling leaders. Together with Confucius and Aristotle. So Xxyu could take printing press and go for one immediately, and as I said, printing presses are very strong with those leaders and wonders. At least that would mean that he can't pick the engineering genius, so that's at least something. Also then I would get irrigation for 1, but still I didn't like it too much. And I draw the new deposits and a kidnap. And Xxyu indeed just goes for the printing press. I think that's the right call by him. And I play the new deposits because if I get some additional resources somehow, or also the development of civil life, I can build a mine in addition to finishing the Rome roads, and that is indeed possible with the development of planning, because I can take the development of trade routes, and then I can finish the Rome roads and still have 2 resources left for building 1 mine. And with my last civil action I want to pick the irrigation. I don't really need the engineering genius. With Cleopatra and Rome roads I have really strong resource production now. I think the cultural heritage would be the better yellow card for me, but also not an ideal one, because I don't really have the most civil actions. So taking and playing this is maybe a little bit too costly, and I get irrigation for 1 now, so I just want to take it to have that available. And I also maybe can even start going for that immediately. I have enough resources to build 1 lab and to do 1 upgrade to irrigation at the next turn. Xxyu seeds, and the development of settlement is opened, and use that additional population to just build another printing press, having now very strong science production, starting culture production already, and being set up nicely for those H2 leaders. And then he takes masonry for 2, which is quite interesting. I think masonry is valued quite highly in the Chinese through the ages community. I'm not really sure about this, but for example Lao Hang, I very often see him taking masonry. And I mean, he has not finished his HA wonder yet, so I think masonry is quite strong. On the other hand, he already built those 2 printing presses, so he will not save resources on those 2 printing presses. And instead he could take swordsman and, for example, growth, cultural heritage or reserves, a yellow card, and potentially important military technology. So I think maybe that could be stronger than the masonry, but the masonry definitely could do some work for him. Then at this turn I want to use the resources of Xxyu, so I have to build a lab. And I also have to think about how I want to use Xxyu at my next turn, so if I even want to use her, and instead I could maybe just go for a leader. I don't really want to go for Eleanor, also don't really want to go for Nostradamus, and Saladin could be okay, but picking him for 2 civil actions would be a little bit costly. It could be something that I want to do here, but yeah, instead of doing this, I wanted to prepare for using Xxyu, and to do this I am building this irrigation here, not because that directly helps with Xxyu, but there is the St. Peter's Basilica, and like this I can take the St. Peter's Basilica, build 1 stage with the resource of Xxyu, and with increasing my population I can then get out of corruption at the next turn. Instead I could also increase my population now and just develop the irrigation, and I could take build 1 stage and upgrade here, but when I do the upgrade now I produce 1 additional food. It leaves me very unflexible, which is a little bit of a problem. Yeah, and maybe I will change my plans. If Saladin is still available for 1, maybe going for him could be quite strong. But as I said, the St. Peter's Basilica could be very strong with those leaders. I could use Xxyu for building it, and yeah, and I also get a little bit of food production going. But yeah, it leaves me very unflexible. Xxyu seeds and opens the development of warfare. He can take that, and I can get out of uprising with increasing his population, but before that he goes for monarchy and for Saladin, then increasing his population to get out of corruption and prevent an uprising. And now he has 6 civil and 3 military actions. As the sprinting presses will get a library, and I really liked his position here, and didn't like that he has not that many civil actions and already starting a lot of cultural production. So I felt that he already has an advantage here. This turn I indeed decided to go for the St. Peter's Basilica. Saladin is taken now, and I want to use Xxyu as long as I have her. And so I want to take St. Peter's, and then with increasing my population I can get out of corruption. I pass over some strong cards for 1 civil action though. I don't take the iron, I don't take the knights, but I still think it's worth it. And there will be a second copy of iron. One thing I didn't really like is that he potentially could go for masonry and then finish library, take iron and a Machu Picchu. And I think if he would get a big economy with Machu Picchu on top of his library and printing press already, that could be very strong for him. However, then he at least would not take the Code of Laws away, and yeah, it would stay on 2 though, which sucks a little bit, but yeah, I maybe could still take it. And he also would pass over some yellow cards. So maybe he will not do this. Of course, I could also take Machu Picchu instead of St. Peter's, but yeah. And if I want to take the iron now, then I either can't use Xxyu or I have corruption. And yeah, without taking the iron, I can't take the Machu Picchu. And even if I would get it without corruption, I think I'm just not nicely set up for it. Because I have only few civil actions, and I think that probably would cause me some problems. Xxyu goes for the masonry now, can finish the library, goes for the breakthrough, the iron and the rich land. So I think that makes sense. He gets 2 very strong yellow cards for 1 and can do this instead of going for the Machu Picchu. And while he not denies the Code of Laws, he makes it a little bit awkward for me. Because when the Code of Laws is now in this position, iron is in this position, meaning that when I want to take the Code of Laws, I will miss out on iron. So if I want to have both, then I have to take both, and that I can't really do, so I will miss out on one of those things for sure. This turn I seeded the Barbarians, because I will switch to Barbarossa this turn, and I was very happy to draw the Fighting Band with the development of politics, because yeah, it was a little bit awkward going for Barbarossa without having a tactic available. With outdrawing this, I actually would not have used him this turn, and yeah, and because I could still draw tactic with knights and maybe take those knights. But with the Fighting Band, I can go for Barbarossa this turn, get stronger, and I play the Barbarians in because Xxyu will have the culture lead for quite a while, and so maybe he will get hit by that. And then I can go for Barbarossa, can use Xxyu's resources one last time to finish the St. Peter's Basilica, can take the Code of Laws, and then I can use Barbarossa and reveal the Fighting Band tactic going up to 4 strength. And I actually discarded 1 colonization card instead of this border conflict, because if I am still stronger at my next turn, I want to push in to potentially hit the Barbarians or maybe another strength event that could be in the deck. I will miss out on iron. I did take the Code of Laws, but I really want to get more civil actions. Being stuck on 4 civil actions and 2 military actions can be very bad. So like this, at least I can get my 5th civil action, and yeah, and I just will miss out on the iron, but I think that's not too bad in 2-player games. Xxyu takes the irrigation, goes for it, so he goes for that before the iron. And I think that makes sense, because now he can increase his population at the next turn, otherwise he would have uprising problems, so that is definitely necessary for him to do this. And then he takes the knights. He could also take the swordsman with me having revealed the Fighting Band, but maybe he has already a nice tactic where he needs the knights. He also got the development of politics, so maybe he thinks that the knights is the more important technology than the swordsman here. I definitely prefer the swordsman. So yeah, that at least leaves me with the option to go for them. And then he gets another rich land, so he will be able to go for those iron upgrades really cheaply. He will get a strong economy. Still has a lot of civil and military actions, and yeah, I still think that he has the better position here. I played the border conflict in. I was not too happy about seeding that, because yeah, I'm not set up to go for a lot of strength, and actually I will pass over those swordsmen this turn. I will explain why immediately, but yeah, and so I'm not really prepared to go for a lot of strength long term, at least at the moment. But it will at least take a little bit of a while until this will be revealed, and hitting the barbarians would be quite nice. But instead I hit the new deposits, but the additional resources allows me something. And yeah, because now I can just go for printing presses. The problem is, with having only 2 military actions, I'm not really set up to go for military pressure. I don't draw any event cards. Yeah, so I just think that is not a right way to approach this position here. So I have to get something, and yeah, with the printing presses I will be able to get a lot of science production and to get some culture production going, to keep up with that, to also be prepared for those culture leaders, so that I maybe can just try to produce more culture than Xxyu and set up a nice economy. And with the additional resource from the new deposits, I can just go for 2 printing presses immediately. and I was actually quite happy about this. Of course, it's a little bit greedy, but I can use Barbarossa one last time. Or no, not one last time. Actually, it will be one last time, but of course, I didn't know that at this time. um, but I can, yeah, build another warrior with him. I will have to do this now because that allows me to do this and increase my population at the next turn. I can't do both at the next turn if I don't do it now because of the yellow tokens that I lose at the end of the age. And yeah, 6 strength will not be enough for the rest of the game, of course, but Xxyu will have only 2 unhappy population available. Maybe he can go for bread and circuses, but he's not really set up to go for a lot of strength. So, and he also probably wants to build his economy, so I thought that I am not that much in danger. But yeah, um, it could definitely long term be problematic because I will miss out on the swordsman, and if I don't get a rifleman, then I could get a problem. So it's definitely a little bit greedy, but I wanted just to get the sprinting presses going. I think I have to be a little bit greedy, otherwise the advantage of Xxyu maybe gets too big. And I do draw a tactic, sadly no event. And at the next turn I have an uprising, and to fix that I can build a religion with the St. Peter's Basilica, or I can go for this drama. So, and I actually thought that is probably what I want to do. That of course depends on whether Xxyu leaves me with this drama, because if he takes this or not, because there are some strong leaders for it, but there are also 2 copies of Opera, and Xxyu also can go for strong resource production, and he prefers to do that. I think that definitely makes sense. And then he picks the bread and circuses to be prepared for Gaudi, Darwin, and I think there's no Pierre. Yeah, no Pierre, but for Gaudi and Darwin. And maybe also to be prepared to go for some military in case I increase my military pressure. This turn I maybe make a mistake. I have to fix my uprising. I either can do it with just increasing my population and building 1 religion, or I can go for this drama. And because of the leaders that are in the deck, I chose to go for this drama. However, the religion costs 1 resource left, and there's a cool, relatively early one coming down the row, or actually a very early one. And with 1 resource more, I can do 1 upgrade immediately at the next turn. And yeah, so instead I could also go for religion and maybe develop the code of laws. I could also think about not developing it. Then I even would have enough science for an H2 government at the next turn, but I don't know whether one will be available. So going for the code of laws, and then for the coal at the next turn and just building a religion is maybe better. On the other hand, having this drama is also quite nice. It produces 1 more culture. It's very nice for Darwin with the St. Peter's Basilica. It's nice for Shakespeare. It's nice for Gaudi. So because of those leaders, I wanted to have this drama, but it might slow the development of my economy down because I can't go for coal immediately the next turn. And so I'm not sure if it is a mistake, but yeah, it could be quite nice to be able to go for coal at the next turn. Then I do draw an infiltrate and the autonomous territory. Xxyu takes the transcontinental railroad and also goes for bread and circuses, builds 1 and another printing press, so now he can really make use of his masonry, saving some resources, but not enough to finish the railroad next turn. So maybe he should not build his printing press, but his printing press definitely gives him some nice value. So yeah, maybe that is better than finishing the railroad 1 turn earlier, but getting stronger could be quite nice for him. There are the barbarians coming, 1 event that he doesn't know about. There, from his perspective, there could be some strength events coming, and maybe getting the strength and the additional resource production is more important than the sprinting press now. And yeah, he also skips the cannons, so I potentially can deny the cannons at the next turn. This turn was a little bit of a dilemma. There is the Conmon, a card that would really be strong for me. And my first instinct was to just take the Conmon and the cannons. I really don't want to miss out the cannons. And yeah, then I would just take those 2 cards. I have no corruption, so that's at least nice. And that was my first instinct. But there's one problem with this, and that is that at the turn after this, I can't really get out of corruption. I can't increase my population, and I can do this one upgrade, but apart from this, yeah, I would just have corruption. Maybe I can get a wonder, but I would not really be set up for a wonder. Without having the coal, the Statue of Liberty would be very, very costly. Maybe that would be something to do, something that I could do, taking the Statue of Liberty then. Yeah, so one thing that I also thought about was taking the coal in the Conmon, but it is also not ideal because I don't have enough science for coal and for Conmon at the next turn, so then I can go for coal to have a way to get out of corruption at the next turn, but then I really delay my Conmon, and then grabbing this for 3 is quite costly. And also I would miss out on the cannons, and that's also something I really didn't want to do. And so at the end I actually went for the Code of Laws. I took this cannon so that he has no cannons available, and then I upgraded one of my irrigations. I can't really do anything else with my last civil action that would make some sense. And like this, I still have 6 resources at the next turn, so I can go for coal. Yeah, when I want to go for coal, I don't have enough science for Conmon anyway. Yeah, so I do this, I can go for coal at the next turn, but when this Conmon will be taken away, it will stay on 2. Sadly, with taking this copy of cannon, the rough idea falls down to 1, which I didn't really like. But Xxyu probably has to take the Conmon, but if I later on then also miss out on the Republic or on strategy, I definitely could get some problems, so I was definitely not happy about this. Maybe just taking the cannons and the Conmon is the better way. Maybe then going for the Statue of Liberty to get out of corruption at the next turn. When I don't do this upgrade, I would have 8 resources at the next turn, so I have to build the first stage, which costs 7. Yeah, so maybe that would be the better way, but it's also really not ideal going for this wonders. Maybe I just have corruption. Yeah, so all of those options I really didn't like too much. At the end, I went for this. I can go for a lot of resource production, and I have the cannon available, and also Xxyu hasn't the cannon available. I thought about pushing the autonomous territory into the deck because at the moment I'm still stronger, and I also at the moment have less culture. The problem is, first of all, there is the navigation. Xxyu has some nice science production, so it could really backfire seeding this in. And if I seed and the barbarians is not revealed, then I actually would have more culture than Xxyu in his turn, even when he pushes an event in. So yeah, at the end, I think it's better to not seed this. And now I draw some more events, some very bad strength events. Xxyu seeds sadly no barbarians, but a cultural influence. I score a little bit more culture. Xxyu takes the rough idea, the Conmon, the navigation, builds 2 stages with the masonry on the railroad, and then actually I think he makes a mistake, because he builds 1 stage of the transcontinental railroad to get out of corruption, but I think he should just upgrade 1 irrigation. Because he has the masonry, and building just 1 stage is basically like floating a civil action. The reason why he probably didn't upgrade this is the rats that he seeded into the deck, and it will be revealed on my turn. But even with the rats, I think he still should do this upgrade. It doesn't generate any food, but it's just a civil action that he wants to spend probably at some point anyway, and then he would have already done that. And now he basically just floats 1 civil action. And he has still enough resource to finish the railroad, even when he does this upgrade. So I think that's probably a mistake. And him not upgrading this is a little bit of an indicator for the rats. But the rats would hurt us relatively equally at the moment, I would say. And so I seeded something into the deck. I was not too happy about seeding the international negotiations, because again, I'm not really that nicely set up for my long-term military, and I didn't like putting that many strength events in there, but I wanted to get the barbarians out, because now it's probably the last time when I have few culture, then Xxyu, it would be really close. But sadly, as I said, the barbarians are not revealed, but the rats instead, and we both lose 3 food. Then I can go for coal this turn. I missed out on the government, so I have to at least show that I get something else instead going, and I can get a coal going. Also, the efficient upgrade is still available. It was also one reason why I thought that going for the coal might be nice, because I can do one upgrade now and then one upgrade at a next turn as well. Without efficient upgrade, maybe I wouldn't have gone for the coal. Like this, I can do this. I also really want to have the cavalryman to be prepared for tactics, and then first I thought that I might even float my last civil action, but I actually think that would be a big mistake, because I think I should take this opera. It doesn't really do anything for me, but it really limits the option of Xxyu. The other copy of opera will be discarded. Xxyu passed over the opera for one civil action at his last turn. And yeah, without the opera, Xxyu can't really go for Shakespeare. Gaudi definitely gets weaker. Darwin is still a very strong leader, but even with Darwin, just not having the opera available takes a lot of options away from him. Or now he can't really increase his cultural production by that much. He has his printing press, he maybe can get Darwin, but then he can't really increase his cultural production, and so maybe I can get a little bit of a culture lead. On the other hand, I have not the most civil actions, and that could lead to some hand space issues, and that's of course something you always have to consider when just taking a card away. But yeah, I think this hate draft is quite important. Sadly, now I will have more culture than Xxyu. I also draw the Hussars, which I was very happy about. But at least Xxyu seeds this turn, so the barbarians are revealed as long as I'm still stronger. So yeah, Xxyu doesn't lose a population. I think that would have hurt him quite a bit. So I was quite unhappy about this, this is the last card in the deck. But at least he seeded while still being the weakest, and gets a little bit punished by that, not because he lost something, but because I didn't lose something, because now with finishing the railroad he would get stronger. Then he develops the navigation, takes the Republic and the frugality. And yeah, the Republic did show up, he takes it away, and now I will be stuck without a government. And that's also the reason why I, if possible, always want to have an H1 government available. So that is definitely a problem, and I was really unhappy about my position here. At least I will maybe get a little tiny bit of a culture lead, and I will have a fine resource production or fine economy in general, but with being stuck on 5 civil and 2 military actions, I definitely could get some problems. And then Xxyu copies the fighting band, which is quite interesting. That indicates to me that he already has drawn an H2 tactic, otherwise that would be way too costly, and I think even with him having an H2 tactic already, it's still quite costly. I don't know what this one additional strength might achieve. One reason might be that there are some colonies coming, but the top event I have knowledge about, it's the border conflict, and it's not a thing I was very unhappy about, so that seeding that in definitely backfired, because now I'm weaker and I really can't get stronger. This turn I did another upgrade. There is one problem, and that is that I can't defend against an aggression. I could go for one cavalryman, and then I would be at 9 strength, but yeah, I didn't really like this. I wanted to upgrade my economy, I didn't want to delay this, and I was willing to take that risk to potentially get hit by an aggression. I would only need 1 H2 defense cards. It's not that unlikely that I could have it. I didn't draw that many cards, but at least I will draw 2 more cards. So I was willing to take that risk, because I also don't really have a free population available. So if I want to go for a cavalryman, I would have to delete something. I just think that would be way too costly and would leave me in a weak position. After upgrading this, I have some options. First of all, one option that I have to consider is if I want to take this rifleman away. I don't really need it for myself. It could still be useful, but with having the hussars, I don't really need it. I don't have a tactic available for it at the moment. But if I take the rifleman away, Xxyu is really limited. He then can't really go for a lot of military. And so maybe taking this rifleman away is actually the way to go, because with taking the opera away, I really limit his culture potential, and with taking the rifleman away, I really limit his military potential, and that actually might cause some problems. But taking this for 3 without really wanting to use it is also very, very costly, and there are some nice other cards that I could take. and so I actually decided to not take the rifleman. It's also a little bit of a gamble because there could be an early modern infantry or another military technology that helps him going for some strength, and then it would just be 3 civil actions, maybe wasted. But it could be an important hate draft, so I definitely had to consider this. But at the end, I chose to not take it because I can just do some other stuff. Also, I had to decide which leader I want to go for. If I want to go for one of those 2 leaders, or if I want to wait for another leader. I think the probably best leader for both of us is Darwin. We both have 4 workers in labs and printing presses. And so Darwin would probably be the best, but Gaudi is available for one now. If I don't take him, he's available for one for Xxyu. And yeah, the other leaders might not be available that cheaply. Also, I would get him earlier, and so I chose to go for Gaudi this turn, just to get a culture earlier, and I get him for 1 civil action, and I think with having only 5 civil actions, I have to be efficient. And then with my last civil actions, I can then take 2 yellow cards, reserves in the breakthrough. So I get some nice cards. And then with my last civil actions, I could either float it, but with having the hussars, I probably want to go for cavalryman anyway, so I can also develop them. One problem is that with developing them now and not without a breakthrough, which I could do at the next turn, I don't have enough science for strategy. And that could be quite nice, being able to go for the strategy and for the cavalry and cavalryman. Like this, I can't do this, but still, I think I have to be efficient with my civil actions, and so I decided to go for the cavalryman this turn. I also thought about seeding the National Bride into the deck, because I probably want to delete this mine at some point anyway, but at this turn I don't really have to delete it, so I still wanted to get a value out of that, and then maybe at the next turn I have to delete it, and then if Xxyu doesn't seed, then I can seed to get this free disband. Yeah, and yeah, and now of course it is very important to see what I will draw. If I will draw a defense card, sadly not. And sadly, Xxyu indeed decides to try an aggression, and he's rewarded for that. The spy hurts me quite a bit. Now it will take quite a while until I, for example, can go for strategy or some other technologies. And yeah, I already was not that happy about my position. Maybe I am a little bit, I undervalue my position. Maybe it is not that bad how I think it is, because at least with having Gaudi, I get a little bit of a culture lead now. But yeah, with being stuck on despotism, I think this position is not as great as Xxyu's. He has better resource production, population is similar, science was similar, at least the production, but now with the spy, Xxyu is a lot of science, I not, so the culture lead at the moment is maybe the only advantage that I have. And Xxyu goes for the rifleman, goes for 2 upgrades, so I maybe should have taken them away. I'm still not sure if this is the right call, but him going up to 15 strength is definitely very problematic for me. And then Xxyu takes the patriotism, so he really wants to go for some military, it seems. Also develops the knights, which really indicates that he might have either classic army or conquistadors available, and then he plays the revolutionary idea. This turn I played the National Bride in, because as I said, I want to get this free disband. Because I want to disband this mine anyway. And yeah, this turn I again have some problems, or I again have country defend against an aggression. Xxyu will lose Saladin, so he'll be at 15 strength, but even if I go for 2 cavalrymen, which is basically the most I can do, I will be at 12, so 3 less than 15, and Xxyu knows that I don't have any H2 defend cards in hand, so if he has another aggression, he can just go for it. And that is definitely very problematic, maybe another reason why I should have taken the rifleman away. Yeah, so the position here is very, very dangerous for me. And then with my last 3 civil actions, I took the strategy and a wave of nationalism, so 2 cards that might help me with my military, because I think that's the top priority for me now, just somehow surviving. And at the next turn, yeah, I will have a lot of problems. First of all, I will lose 2 yellow tokens, so I will have uprising problems. I might have to delete another thing because of that. And I also have hand space issues. I don't really want to develop the opera or the cannons because I want to go for the strategy as soon as possible. So those 4 cards I can't really get out of my hand. So I only can use the wave. Maybe if I delete something to build a cavalryman, it could be fine. But then I only have one spot in hand, one free spot in hand, and that is also an issue. And of course, if Xxyu gets another aggression, and I could even have more issues. So I think I'm in a very, very dangerous position here. Then the H ends, Xxyu loses Saladin. He cedes. I was very happy to see this. It seems that he has no aggression in hand. That is definitely was a big relief for me. And the vast territories opened, and that actually would help me quite a lot with my uprising problems, also with my transition into the Hussars. So I actually was willing to bid all my 4 warriors and 1 cavalryman, which seems crazy, but I don't really need those warriors. Those warriors will give me more value when they are on the yellow bank. And then I could use the wave to build some cavalrymen, go for the Hussars, and it really, I think that would help me quite a lot. Of course, I would prefer if I maybe would get it cheaper, but I don't get it at all. Xxyu has the navigation, at least I make him pay here, and he indeed has to pay it. 2 riflemen is definitely costly, especially because he can't really make a transition. So here, as we can see at his turn, will just rebuild those riflemen. He also wants to go for Darwin. Darwin produces him 4 culture, will save him some civil actions, so a very strong leader for him. And then he can increase his population 2 times and goes for a rifleman and 1 warrior. Maybe the warrior because there's another colony coming. Maybe to just get stronger and leave more resource, but probably the reason is a colony. It's maybe a little bit questionable because he has only a few military actions. So maybe building a knight instead would be better, but it also depends on what tactic he has. And he has corruption, so the vast territory was quite costly for him. He has to rebuild those riflemen, he has corruption, but of course it also helped him quite a lot with his population situation. And he also has a lot of resources, so the corruption is not too bad for him. This turn, as I said, I have hand space issues and I have uprising problems, but there is 1 card that helps me quite a lot here, and that is Chaplain, because when I play the wave, then I can just take Chaplain, elect him, and with St. Peter's Basilica, Chaplain gives me 3 happy faces, and I really can use those happy faces. And I definitely want to use the resources of the wave, so I destroyed 1 HA lab and built a cavalryman. Also revealed a Hussars tactic. I really wanted to get stronger because there is still the international negotiations coming, and maybe Xxyu isn't really expecting a strength event and could maybe see it and open that. Then I have 1 civil action left, and I definitely want to have the reserves. I can use the resource for my military, I can use the food to increase my population, so the flexibility is great. And then also very important is that I can just play it and make a free spot in my hand. For example, Engineering Genius would stay in my hand, and I have to be very careful about my hand space here. So finally I'm stronger and not in a threat of an aggression, and after spending that much for his colony, maybe I am for the next few turns stabilized in military, but I still could get some problems long term in military. Xxyu takes the military theory, also he doesn't see it. And then takes the military buildup. Maybe that's more of a denial pick, but of course it could also definitely be that he can use it for himself. And then he goes for the military theory and for the knights, also upgrades 1 farm, and still again has corruption. So yeah, that is definitely costly for him. And with going for the military theory, he's definitely preparing for military bit, and yeah, there's also no multimedia, no movies, so he is, as I said, without having the opera, he is limited in his options. This turn I finally can develop the strategy, so hopefully I will start drawing more H3 cards. I can play the reserves for food to increase my population. I think I really have to do this. I have a nice amount of resource available, so I think I can allow myself that to use it for food and to prevent one disband at a later stage of a game with getting another population out. I can get another cavalryman, getting stronger again, and drawing 3 cards, which is quite nice. One reason for not using it for food is that, for example, if I just delete a warrior or another lab and play the reserves for resource, or not play them at all, then I could pick those reserves. It could be quite an important card. Like this, I can only take the endowment, but I think the endowment could also end up being quite nice, getting 6 culture, at least the reserve stays in 2. Both air forces will be available on at my next turn, unless one of them is taken, of course, but one of those air forces will at least be available. But I don't really have a lot of science, so air forces is maybe not something I want to go for anyway, but it's still nice to have them available. I pass over the modern infantry, but I don't have a tactic for that, and yeah, so I decided to not take them, and also the same argument applies here. I don't really have a lot of science, so I think it's very unlikely that I will be able to go for modern infantry and cannons. And without being an H2 tactic being available at the moment, the only tactic that I could draw would be the shock troops, and that's not that likely. And yeah, and one thing that I have still going for me is that I produce a little bit of a culture lead here. When we take a look at the overview, I have a culture lead of 17 points here. My production is still stronger, and Xxyu still has no nice way to increase his cultural production. Yeah, but I have still some problems. I can't get more population out. I'm limited in my science, and yeah. And Xxyu goes for a war here, but it is only a war over territory, so it's not that bad, and maybe a war over culture or a hybrid war could be. He goes for the air forces, develops them, increases population, destroys a lab, definitely costs him a little bit with having Darwin, also destroying his farm. Then he builds some units, and at the end reveals the classic army, and goes up to 46 strength, which is definitely quite a bit of strength. This turn, yeah, was a little bit difficult. Yeah, I had to think about how I want to defend, and the thing is, I also have to set myself up for defense at the next turn, because with Xxyu didn't draw any cards, and it really made me think that he probably has a war already available, otherwise missing out on a card draw could be too costly. And so I had expected him to go for another war. He can play the patriotism, go for 3 more units to get another army. So I had to think about how much I want to defend this turn and how much I want to be able to defend against at the next turn. One nice thing at least is that Xxyu has not really more population available, so every worker that he from now on puts into military will be a disband. Disbanding the printing presses will be very costly with Darwin, and iron mines, of course, also are quite costly to disband. So that's at least one nice thing. If he goes for a war, then he would have to delete 3 things. But yeah, he could win a war, so I was definitely concerned. And this turn I destroyed 3 things, printing press, a lab, and a warrior, and then I can build 3 cavalrymen. Now I lose only 2 yellow tokens instead of 3 that I would lose when I only build 2 cavalrymen. And that could make a difference, because now I take 2 copies of reserves, and I will have 3 food. So with playing 1 reserves for food, I could go up to 7 food, and with increasing my population, I would get another happy worker. If I lose 3 yellow tokens, then I would get an unhappy worker, so that will leave me with this option. But of course, it might also be that I have to use the reserve just for resources and have to disband some more things. I also thought about going for tanks. I can't really go for Air Force, I just don't have the science for it. But I thought about not deleting the printing press, so that I have 9 science available at the next turn, and going for the tanks instead of 1 reserves. But first of all, then I can't really go for 3 cavalrymen, so I would lose 1 more yellow token, which I didn't like. And yeah, and also I would miss out on 1 reserves. the tanks definitely would be nice in that sense that I could increase my strength relatively nicely without having to use more population, and it is quite effective with having the hussars. For example, doing 4 upgrades would be 10 strength for 8 resources, which is not bad considering that I don't have to use more population. But then that would be the maximum I could do. Or if I want to upgrade them, of course I can also build more tanks, but yeah. But then, as I said, it would miss out on the reserves. I would lose 1 more yellow token, so I didn't want to do this. And now I was really afraid that Xxyu would go for war. First of all, he steals 2 yellow tokens, but actually he goes for blunder, and luckily I have even 2 defense cards in hand, so I can defend against this aggression and still have 1 in hand. And I was very happy to see this. It could be that he has a war, but he wants to go for an even bigger war at the next turn. That could be something that definitely could be. It could also be that he has no war yet, but then I think the war over territory was maybe a mistake, because I think he should rather have drawn cards, but it could definitely be that he has a war available and thinks that the war that he can do at the next turn will be bigger. It also would make it that he can do the disbands 1 turn later, so he gets more value out of that. So either he has already a war and doesn't want to go for it this turn because of those reasons, or he has no war yet in hand, but I don't know this. Xxyu takes the reserves and a patriotism, and really seems that he still prepares for war, which makes me think that he probably has 1 in hand, otherwise he could still do something peacefully, for example taking this wonder. But still, both copies of Multimedia's movies are still in the deck, which is definitely annoying for him, so he can't really increase his culture production. And he also has no free population, so that's another thing why he can't really increase his card production that nicely. So it seems that he goes all in military and takes those cards away from me, takes them for himself, and maybe wants to go for a war at the next turn. And then he even placed the military build-up for 0 resources. He was not able to fit this one in at the last turn when he was weaker and got stronger. He needed a civil action then, I think. And now his hand would be full. He probably doesn't expect to be weaker anytime soon, so he just plays it to get it out of his hand. This turn I definitely still expected a war from Xxyu the next turn, and first I thought that I might want to play the reserves for food, go for another population, and then build 2 cavalrymen. However, I then instead decided to go delete a warrior and play the reserves for resources, and then pick the United Nations. I also can pick the United Nations when I play the reserves for food and increase my population. Then I would just have enough civil actions to take the United Nations. However, then I would have used this reserves for resources, and when I don't use the reserves for food, and when I don't use the reserves for food, then now I can go for 2 more cavalrymen at the next turn, so I can at least get a reasonable amount of strength, going up to 10 cavalrymen. And then I would have still 1 resource left. 6 production is 7, 1 resource is 11, engineering genius is 16. So if Xxyu goes for a war, I can do a reasonable defense and finish the United Nations, and I definitely wanted to have this option available. I also wanted to take the United Nations to again limit the option of Xxyu. He could still maybe go for the wonder. I have a culture lead, but it's still not that big, as that it is not possible at all to for him to catch up peacefully. So that limits this option, and with me being able to defend and to finish it, it definitely that also just is quite nice for me. There's no more reserves, no more patriotism, so nothing that really helps me a lot with my military. If there would be another reserves and that would allow me to go for even more strength, then I probably have to grab this. But like this, I think the United Nations is a nice pickup, and also I can a nice pick, and also I can take this oil. Like this, there will be 7 cards at Xxyu's turn, so even if he declares a war, or declares no war and takes no cards, I can NDH by just taking the Engineering Genius, so I think that's quite important. And now, of course, again, it was very interesting to see whether Xxyu has a war now. And he indeed has one. He has the hybrid war, which causes problems for him, but I think even bigger ones for me. And yeah, and with the hybrid war, you can then go for Marlene Dietrich, destroys a printing press, another printing press, another iron, and then he can go for another army with Marlene and for an air force going up to 72 strength. At least after losing Darwin and destroying those printing presses, he also goes down to 2 cultural production, so that was one thing that still gave me a little bit of hope. But 72 is quite a lot of strength, and as you can see, those missing happy faces definitely cause some big problems for me. Yeah, so I really had to see what I can do at my turn. And I chose to see this impact of colonies in. Xxyu has 1 colony, so at the moment it's better for him. But I really thought that, yeah, first of all, I thought that there could definitely be a colony. You might remember that at some point Xxyu built 1 warrior, when he maybe could have just built another rifleman directly or a knight, which really indicates that there could be another colony in the deck. And a colony, especially one that gives yellow tokens, could help me quite a lot. And Xxyu can't really send a unit, so I would get it probably for just 1 warrior. Of course, there could also be some strength events, at least I know that the refugees aren't in the deck, but of course another card that is in the deck is the international negotiations. But actually, I kind of wanted to see this revealed. Of course, a colony that helps me would also be quite nice, but if the international negotiations is revealed, then at least I did find a turn how I somehow, that would be somehow okay for me, where I can go for 2 more cavalrymen. The problem is, if the international negotiations is revealed in Xxyu's turn, then he can take resource away, and then the thing that I talked about with going for 2 cavalrymen and still being able to finish the United Nations would not be possible then. So if I reveal it myself now, I can just give him the science, and then I can for sure, unless Xxyu has a second blunder, go for 2 cavalrymen and finish the United Nations. So those 2 reasons, those were the 2 reasons why I seeded this impact of colonies. And I actually do get rewarded, because the inhabited territory is revealed, and that helps me quite a lot. So that is very lucky for me to get this here. Xxyu can't bid on it, so I just get it for 1 warrior, and you can immediately see how much that helps me. I still have to delete 1 thing, but I can just delete this farm. I won't have famine at the next turn. And then I can build those 2 cavalrymen and play the reserves for resources, take the engineering genius, develop the oil, and then take the urban growth. So, yeah. Now it depends on whether Xxyu seeds. If he seeds, then I probably can't finish the United Nations. If he has a blunder, I can't finish the United Nations. But with me probably not being able to defend against an aggression from his point of view, it could definitely be that he has 1 armed intervention or something, and maybe then goes for that instead of seeding. And it's not that likely that he has another blunder available. So now a lot depends on his next politics action. Yeah, he definitely will steal some science, but with him being behind, I will get another production and then another production, and his production will be very small. So yeah, even when he now steals some culture, it's not over yet, but it depends on what he does. If he can finish my wonder, maybe if I draw a nice impact that I can use, and yeah. So again, what draw was very important here, and I was very happy about this draw, because the international the impact of competition and the impact of harmony are both impacts that could be quite nice. With the urban growth, I can build another drama at my next turn. So I have a harmony of 12 and Xxyu at the moment only 8. And my impact of competition is also better at the moment, because Xxyu has a lot of knights and I have 10 cavalrymen. So a very nice draw for me here, because I can even play 1 impact and evaluate 1 impact with the United Nations if I should be able to finish that. Then the age ends. Xxyu steals 18 culture, is now in the lead, but it is still close. And there is an armed intervention. And I steal 7 culture from Xxyu steals 7 culture from me, which is definitely not ideal. But while that is not great, at least it means that I can finish the United Nations, because the international negotiations is not revealed and Xxyu didn't play a blunder. So it is actually not that bad. And then Xxyu deletes a lot of units, which makes my impact of competition even bigger, but he wants to build some culture buildings, wants to build his religion, and also with building a mine he is prepared for potential impact of industry and the impact of harmony that I have in hand. At this turn I have to be very careful because I have 2 impacts that are playable for me, or one is even quite nice. However, one thing I didn't consider at the last turn is that now, if I reveal the international negotiations, I don't have a choice because I only have 2 food after deleting the farm, and I have only 1 science after developing the oil. So if I cede, then I actually would have to pay the resources to Xxyu. So sadly I can't cede, but at least I can evaluate one of those impacts with the United Nations, and the impact of harmony would be the same for us, so I only miss out on 3 culture for seeding, so that's also not too bad. I'm not sure if I would have done something else with having this knowledge in mind, but it maybe would make sense to not delete a farm. But probably it still makes sense, because that only applies if I draw 2 impacts and can finish the United Nations. If I can't finish the United Nations, I can seed anyway, then losing this doesn't make that big of a difference. So only if I draw 2 impacts, which is definitely not likely with 2 draws, then it makes a big difference. Of course, if I draw 1 impact, it also makes a difference of 3 between seeding it and evaluating it with the United Nations. So yeah, then it makes also that difference. But yeah, maybe I could have deleted the printing press, but maybe I also would do the same. This turn I can play the endowment, so this endowment is now quite useful. I can play the engineering genius, finish the United Nations for 12, and after deleting his units, the impact of competition is quite bad for Xxyu, and I already overtake him. I can use the urban growth to build 1 drama, and yeah, with already having him overtaken, with getting 1 more production, and with the only impact being in there being the impact of colonies, yeah, now it was already clear now that I'm able to win this game, and of course we can also see this and impact evaluation, because the impact of colonies is the same for both of us, and I'm able to win this game with 12 points of a lead. And actually I think I actually really didn't expect it to win this game. I really thought that 1 war would break me, that my civilization is not that much better, that I can survive 1 war. And even at a late stage of age 3, I still didn't thought that I could survive 1 war. One hope that I did have was, and that also was definitely true, that if Xxyu has to build more military, has to delete a lot of stuff, but I still thought that that probably 1 war would be enough to defeat me. But yeah, especially after losing Darwin, but also before, I produced a little bit more of culture every turn, and it added up, and at the end I out of the sudden had a lead of quite a lead. And then this 1 hybrid war was not enough for Xxyu to win. And yeah, I also got quite lucky at the end with the inhabited territory. Maybe the international negotiations being revealed would also be enough, but then I think it would be very, very close, because the inhabited territory definitely gave me a lot of culture indirectly. Yeah, so I was very surprised to win this, and of course I'm very happy being able to win this with having 2 wars. I think Xxyu would be able to win this game if the war over territory would be a normal war instead. I am still interested in whether he had already a hybrid war in hand when he declared a war over territory, or if he did draw this after this. If he made a decision to declare this war even though he has no war in hand, or if he already was prepared and had another war in hand. No. And so of course I'm very happy having won this game. I think maybe made some mistakes, Maybe I shouldn't have gone for the drama to be able to go for the call immediately. Maybe I should have taken the Conmon when I had a chance, even though it might cause corruption, or I might have to go for the Statue of Liberty, which would be very expensive. But having no government definitely cost me quite a lot, especially not having a lot military actions. I lost a spy, I didn't draw many cards. I could have even lost into another aggression, but luckily Xxyu, it seems that he didn't have another one. So I think, yeah, at some points I think I was a little bit unlucky, for example with the barbarians at the beginning. But I think Xxyu played very nicely. Maybe I should have taken that opera to have that in hand. It was available for one net for him, and then I took the other one away, and he was somewhat limited. He was able to go for a lot of military, but yeah, then I just at this point had a culture lead. Yeah, so it was very surprising for me to win this, and now we can also take a look at the standings and see how the other games have been finished. And we can first of all take a look at the other games. The first 3-1 you already saw. So after my last game, Isaiah won against DDXY, Xxyu won against DDXY. Then after my win against Isaiah, Silent X111 won against Xxyu. Isaiah also won against Xxyu, so Xxyu has lost those 2 games, and now he lost another game, meaning that he definitely will not advance to the next stage. He already has now all games finished. And when we take a look at the standings, we can see that I was able to win the first 2 games. I definitely, I said it already quite some times, but I definitely expected to win this game against Xxyu, so I already thought about potential tie breaks and stuff. But yeah, now I have 2 wins and I'm still have a very strong position, but there are still 2 games to come, especially one against Silent X111. That will be a very tough game, and DDXY has started with 2 losses, so yeah, he also probably has no chance, maybe in some edge case, still a chance to continue. But the 2 biggest contender for the places, for the top 2 places that will advance to the next stage are definitely Isaiah, who has 3 games finished and 2 wins, and Silent X111, who has 1 game finished and who has won this 1 game. So especially the game against Silent X111 will be a very important one. I hope you are excited for that, and then I hope it was an interesting game for you. Have a nice time and see you in the next video.